What's going on, Muscle Monsters? Alain Gonzalez here, and this is the last and final video of the periodization series. In the first video, Tom went over what periodization is and why it's important for maximizing your growth. In the second video, he discussed linear periodization, the more popular model, and why it may not be the best for maximizing hypertrophy. On top of that, he gave you a better alternative to a linear model, right? Still a linear model, but one that's based more on building size than the traditional one. And in this video, he's bringing the noise. He's going to be going over all of the variables of hypertrophy, right? So he'll give you an overview of volume, intensity, frequency, and so forth. And then he's going to give you a very solid framework for how you can program your training, again, for maximizing muscle size. So without further ado, I'll let him take it away.
Right guys, back for part 3 of the video. We've talked so far about periodization, generally giving you a little bit of overview about what it is, what it means, and how it can help you get better results. And in the last video, I talked a little bit about linear periodization, which is the most popular form of periodization, but not, in my opinion, the best one for getting you the best results in terms of building muscle. So let's just go over some of the fundamentals of training to get that clear, and then we can, with that framework, start to talk about a more optimal periodization model for gaining muscle. So training must be specific. So first of all, specificity is king. If you want to get super strong, you need to do strength work. If you want to get big, you need to be doing the training that is most specific to that. So while it's fun to get in the gym and test our 1 rep max, is it really getting you bigger? Probably not, just massaging your ego. So specificity, and then so you need to train specific to your goals. If your goal is size, you need to be training with size in mind, and that's where you need to focus. And then you need to follow the principle of overload. So once you're training specifically for your goal, you need to do more of that over time. On average, you need to do more work. Now, it's not going to mean necessarily every session you're able to do more, but on average, that trend is that you're doing more and more work, forcing the body to adapt. And to achieve this, you need to manipulate the variables of training. And in that case, we're talking about intensity, volume, and frequency. So as I touched on in the last video, intensity is measured as percent of 1 rep max. So your 1 rep max is 100%, because it's the most you can lift for 1 good rep. Whereas hypertrophy work, we're going to be mostly in the 6 to 12 range. So that's probably anywhere between 70, 75% to 80, 85% 1 rep max. Volume is measured as sets times reps times weight is a great way to measure volume. So you need to do more sets, reps, and weight over time. So, for example, following overload and by doing overloading volume means that in week 1 you might do 3 sets of 10 with 100 kilos. And then in week 2, you could increase that overload by doing more work or more volume. Could be 4 sets of 10 with 100 kilos, or 3 sets of 10 with 102.5 kilos. But basically, the key is you're doing more work over time. And volume, as I stated, measured as sets times reps times weight. Frequency, that's how frequently you train. And not just on how many total sessions you're doing a week, but how frequently you're hitting a body part. So for example, you might hit your quads twice a week. A lot of people hit body parts only once per week. Probably not optimal. Most research is indicating that 2 times a week is probably a good place to be. Some muscles can handle more than others. But as a rule of thumb, hitting a muscle group twice a week is likely your best bet for building muscle. So you've got those variables. We know the training must be specific, we know it must be overloading, and we've got these 3 key variables within training that we need to work: volume, intensity, and frequency. Now, periodization is knitting all those together to get you the maximal results. So as long as you follow those first 2 principles of specificity and overload, you're going to be going great guns in terms of getting your goals. Intelligently manipulating the 3 variables of intensity and volume and frequency is a great idea as well. And then within that, going a little bit further, Brad Schoenfeld's talked about the three mechanisms of hypertrophy. Number one is mechanical tension, number two is muscle damage, and number three is metabolic stress. So mechanical tension is the amount of tension loading on the target muscle. So lifting heavy weights is a great way to achieve that. Muscle damage is the damage accumulated, the micro traumas of at muscles from the work they do. So really slow negative reps is one way that really causes a lot of muscle damage. And the third is metabolic stress. So the accumulation of lactic acid, hydrogen ions, for example, that pump, that burn when you're training in the high rep range, that's metabolic stress. All three of those factors play a role in hypertrophy, but mechanical tension is the big one. So you're going to need to lift heavy. By heavy, I mean probably around about the 6 rep mark, pushing as much weight as you can handle with good form in that rep range. Now, again, talking about knitting this together, a good rule of thumb is to follow Wormborn's 2007 study, where he identified the following parameters as being a good place to be for hypertrophy, for maximising muscle gain in terms of training. So 40 to 70 reps per muscle group per session, and somewhere between 80 and 210 reps per muscle group a week. Most of your training in the 66 to 75% range, with 2, maybe 3 sessions a week for certain muscle groups. So you need to put that into a periodized plan that follows the principles of overload. That's quite specific training now to hypertrophy. We know how we should be training most of the time for hypertrophy. And how do you overload? Well, the more work you do, the more muscle size you get, essentially. The more volume you can train with those parameters, the better your results. So how do we overload you in volume week on week, month on month? And that's where I think a reverse linear approach works well. In this case, intensity is quite high and volume is a little bit lower, and then over time we actually increase volume and the intensity just drops a little bit. So for example, in mesocycle 1, your first block of training, you might do like traditional hypertrophy type work, focusing mostly in the 6 to 10 rep range. Then you take a deload once you've ended that mesocycle, start the next phase, the next mesocycle, and that might be in the 8 to 12 rep range. So you're just pushing volume that little bit higher, and then take a deload and say your third and final hypertrophy block there, you do a mesocycle where you do 12 to 15 rep work or really push the metabolite type work, so getting a lot of lactic acid, getting a great pump, so drop sets, trisets, giant sets, sets of 20 reps, these sort of things, even using BFR, blood flow restriction, they all work really well. And phase on phase there, you've asked your body to do more, you've challenged it, and you've progressively overloaded, so you've adhered to that principle. So then how might this look if you knit it together to more practical, putting a split together and these sort of things? So in phase 1, you might do 4 sessions a week following an upper-lower split. So frequency per body part is twice per week because you do 2 upper and 2 lower sessions. Then week 2, you increase your total training volume by shifting to 5 days a week. So you increase volume through doing an extra day. And then you follow an upper-lower push-pull leg split. So you're hitting the muscle groups the same frequency in terms of every muscle gets 2 times a week, but you can increase per session volume because that is spread over 5 days rather than 4 now. Then in mesocycle 3, you could switch to a 6-day-a-week training plan using push-pull. And push-pull isn't just upper body, it's push for the legs, so that's quad dominant stuff, squats, leg presses, leg extensions, and then pull is hamstring dominant work, so RDLs, leg curls, good mornings, deadlifts, that sort of thing. And then obviously push and pull upper body exercises as well. So if you follow a push-pull split, every muscle group gets hit 3 times a week. So we've manipulated frequency there up. Your training is actually up in volume because you're doing 6 sessions a week, so you can do more per in each session added up over those 6. It's more work than you did in the month before when you were doing 5 sessions a week. But intensity has actually dropped. So we've pushed 2 of the variables really hard here. We've pushed frequency and we've pushed volume, but we've dropped intensity. Because if you push all 3 too hard, you'll just overtrain. whereas by backing one of them off means you can push the other two and still stay within your ability to recover. Now, if you follow that principle, I think you get amazing results. You'll do great, and you'll get better results than if you were just following a linear model as far as muscle gain goes. So, guys, if you've got any questions, drop me a note, get back to me. I'll be happy to hear them. Hopefully, I can help. If any of it didn't make sense, I'll also be happy to clear it up. So, let me know if you've got any questions. If not, happy training. Let's see you all get huge.